Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another SmackDown review. Alright, we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. We have Trick Williams coming out with Little Yachty and everything, and Trick is announcing that the fact that him and Lash Legend got married in Jamaica, so congratulations Trick Williams and Lash Legend on that. And as he's talking, then Ricky Saints comes out, and he tells Trick, that he shouldn't, overlook him, because at SummerSlam, he's going to beat him and take his title away from him and stuff. And then Lil Yachty starts talking some stuff to Ricky Saints, and then Ricky Saints gives him a cheap shot across the head and everything. Then after he knocks him down, Ricky Saints gets out the ring, and then he comes back as Trick is trying to get Lil Yachty up, and then Ricky Saints comes in and cheap shots Trick Williams and stuff. And then we get a little backstage with with Jackie talking to Alexa Bliss, saying what happened to Charlotte from B-Fab and Michin when they attacked Charlotte a couple of weeks ago, and Charlotte is injured now and everything. And then she says to Jackie that she reluctantly, she wants revenge, but she reluctantly wants to, tag with Tiffany Stratton, and because she's gonna tag with Tiffany is because Tiffany came out and helped them, when they were being jumped by Jade, Cargill, and B-Fab and Michin, which she calls them the minions and stuff. So we get the match with Alexa Bliss, Tiffany Stratton against B-Fab and Michin. You know, the match, goes. I mean, there's a little botches in the match and everything, but it was okay. It was okay match and everything. Then we get the little interference with Jade. She comes out and she takes Tiffany Stratton from the ring post and everything, and she knocks it down to into the ring. And then B-Fab hits Tiffany with a face plant, and she pins Tiffany Stratton. So we get B-Fab pinning Tiffany Stratton. I think this is B-Fab's first pin in quite some time. I can't even remember the last time that B-Fab had pinned anybody and stuff. And then Chelsea Green, she comes running down and everything with a kendo stick in her hand. And she hits Michin with the kendo stick. And as she's getting in the ring, she drops the kendo stick and stuff. And she's looking a little bit retarded and stuff. And then while she's in the ring, B-Fab comes at her and she opens up the rope, and B-Fab goes through the ropes, and then Jade goes after her, and she pulls the rope down, and then Jade goes over the top rope and everything. So they're sitting out there looking kind of crazy and everything and stuff, and Chelsea and Tiffany are in the ring, kind of standing strong. But anyway, we get to Tama and Tonga, they're talking to Solo Sokoa and everything, and they're telling Solo that, they're going to be leaving him because the elders told him, that they can't deal with, Solo and don't want them to be around Solo and stuff like that. So we're not sure part of that as far as, who the elders are because, are they part of the bloodline and stuff? Because I don't think they are. I think their father, is more, I guess, kind of dragged in, or whatever the case may be. I know they're from Tonga and everything, and then the bloodline, they're mostly from Hawaii and Samoa, So we'll see what happens with that, because Solo tells them that they can't leave, and then they look at him, and then they just walk away. They just walk off. And then we get Jade Cargill back there talking to Nick Aldis, talking about she wants a match with Chelsea Green because of what Chelsea did coming into the ring and and getting into Jade's business. And so Nick Aldis makes a match between them later on, in the show. Then we get the match between Nathan Frasure and Ray Fenix for the AAA Cruiserweight title and everything. And I mean, this match was actually a pretty doggone good match. These guys were all over the place. And if you blink, probably miss some stuff and everything. I mean, the match was pretty good. It was pretty solid. Um, it was fast paced and everything. There was some good moves in there and stuff. And then ultimately, Ray Phoenix hits Nathan Frasure with the Mexican Muscle Buster, and wins the match and retains as AAA Cruiserweight Champion. And then we get a backstage segment with R Truth and Damian Priest and everything. The War Raiders come out because they are the AAA Tag Team Champions, and then R Truth kind of says that they're big luchadors and stuff, because they are the AAA Tag Team Champions, and we all know that's from that promotion is from Mexico and stuff, and that's where most of the luchadors are at. And then R Truth started going into his Spanish accent and stuff because the War Raiders had challenged them, to a match, the AAA titles against, the World Tag Team titles and stuff, and then Damian Priest is trying to keep our truth kind of quiet. Our truth say, in the Spanish voice, do they want to match with him and stuff like that? Kind of reminds you of sound like Scarface because he puts a toothpick in his mouth and he starts getting the accent going and stuff. And then Damian Priest, puts his hands over R Truth's face and everything, and then walks him off. So eventually, we're gonna see that match happen. When it's gonna happen, don't know. And then we got LA Knight, you know, coming to the ring. LA Knight is down to SmackDown. Jack is asking him why he's here and stuff, and then he goes out to the ring and he calls Solo Sikoa out. And then Solo, tells LA that he's not there to fight him. You know, that Solo tells him that his family, left him, meaning that Tomatunga and Talatunga, walked out on him and stuff, and that he doesn't have a family anymore. And then Solo says that tells LA Knight that they have a something in common, as far as the bloodline is concerned and everything. And he's saying that he hates the bloodline, as far as Jimmy, Jay, and Roman are concerned and stuff like that. And then he asked LA Knight, since they do have something in common about not liking the bloodline and everything, would he, tag team with them to help him take, the bloodline out and stuff. And then LA Knight says that, hey, he does things his way, his own way. That's how it's been and everything. And he told Solo that he wouldn't tag with him because, I don't think he likes Solo, even though Solo, helped him out, last week when he spiked Jimmy, and then LA wins that match and stuff. But still, regardless, LA Knight is just saying he does things on his own, you know, his own way, and that's how it's gonna be. And he walks off. Then we got Brian back there with Sami Zayn, and Sami Zayn, um, saying that he has to redeem himself, and he's going, and then he says that he's going to be champion, after SummerSlam and stuff. So then we go out of that segment, and then we have Paige, taking on Jayne. That match was it was it was not bad. It wasn't great. They did do their thing. I know Paige she's a good wrestler and stuff, and Jayne, she's a good wrestler too and stuff. But they go. It's a pretty decent match and everything, and then Paige rolls up Jayne for the win, just straight up like that. Another roll up, no big finish or anything like that. Just rolls her up, and then we get DanHousen, with the Miz and Kit Wilson and stuff, and then Los Gaza comes in and says that Danhausen owes them money and stuff like that. And then, Matt Cardona, he comes in and stuff, and he's talking to Danhausen and everything. And then Danhausen walks out on him and everything because the Miz and Kit Wilson, they took off on him and stuff. So he goes out to go find them and stuff. And then we get a little backstage with Finn Balor talking to Tomatunga with Talatunga with him and everything, and they're talking, and then Finn Balor's talking about how they were in the past and stuff like that, and then Tama Tonga tells Finn Balor, you're like, hey, look, him and Shinsuke, Nakamura, they had some good things in the past too, and then he tells Finn Balor, look what happened to Shinsuke and everything. And then they walk off and walk away and stuff. And then we get Danhausen coming out to the ring with the Miz and Kit Wilson, and they're looking all crazy and stuff like that. And then they have the match with Los Gaza and stuff, and the match goes on and everything. It's a little bit crazy. Then Los Gaza, kind of attacks the Miz, and then they attack Kit Wilson and stuff like that and everything. And then Danhausen gets the pin over I can't remember which one, but anyway, Danhausen and Matt Cardona, they win the match. And then we get Brian, talking to Gunther, and then Gunther saying that, he's been screwed twice by Cody, and later on tonight he's gonna, call Cody out and talk to him about it and stuff. And then we get the match with Chelsea Green and Jade Cargill. And this match was, it was okay match and everything. I mean, Chelsea did her thing. Jade did her thing. Jade looking a little bit better in the ring as she goes. As she goes. I mean, it was okay. There was a few botches in the match and everything, but anyway, Jade ends up. Chelsea ends up getting jaded by Jade Cargill, and Jade wins the match. Then after the match, Jade attacks Chelsea and stuff, and then they beat her down. B-Fab and Michin come in, they help beat Chelsea down, and then Tiffany comes out with Alexa Bliss, and they come to the ring to help Chelsea. Then Michin and B-Fab, they get in the ring and they attack Tiffany and Alexa and Chelsea, and then Tiffany ends up getting jaded by Jade Cargill, and they walk off. They stay strong standing, and Chelsea Green and Tiffany and Alexa are beaten up. Then we get Brian talking to Solo Sokola, and then Royce Key shows up and tells Solo, that I believe Jay or Jimmy, one of them dudes, coming after him for what he did last week, as far as spiking Jimmy in the throat and causing him to lose his match. And then Solo said he's not worried about that and everything. And he's asking Royce Keys, will he help him out? Will he have his back and everything? And then Royce Keys, looks at him and then he just walks away from him and stuff. And then we get a little film thing with um, Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker talking about the match that they're going to have, at Night of Champions, in the cage match and stuff like that. Then we go back with Trick Williams and Lil Yachty, and they're talking about everything that Ricky Saints, did to them earlier in the show and everything by coming out sucker punching them and stuff like that. And then Trick tells Ricky Saints that, hey, look, Night of Champions, he's gonna get tricked out and everything, and he's gonna lose. And Trick is telling him that he's gonna beat him. Then we get the match with Giulia versus Kiana James. I mean, this match is okay and stuff. It's weird. I mean, because Kiana James thought that Giulia was the reason why she lost last week and everything. But anyway, the match went on. It was okay and stuff. There were some botches in the match and everything. It's like in all the female matches, there's a lot of missed spots and stuff like that. A lot of botches. They need to get it together. But then Giulia gives Kiana James the Northern Lights, and she wins the match. And as the match is over, then in comes the ring. Here comes Blake Monroe. She finally shows up. Last week she was talking about Giulia and stuff. I mean, she put Giulia, Charlotte Flair, and someone else on her hit list. So she comes out and she attacks Giulia, beats her down and stuff like that. So Blake Monroe shows up now. So we'll see where this goes with Giulia and her. Then we got Cody Rhodes coming out to the ring. Cody starts to talk, and out comes Sami Zayn. And then Sammy's saying that he regrets hitting, you know, um, the ref, and then counting, doing the fast count on Gunther and everything, and hitting Cody with the belt, and then Cody tells Sammy that the difference between him and KO is that KO was a world champion and not Sammy. And then he tells Sammy that KO wouldn't hit him from the back; he would hit him from the front and everything, and basically saying that that's how Sammy is. He can't get you from the front; he has to attack you from the back. And as he's saying that, then Gunther comes out, and then Gunther tells Sammy that he's a non-factor and everything. And he also reminds Sammy that he's never been champion before either, so he's not even a problem and stuff, and that he's gonna win um, the title, you know, um, at Night of Champions, and then go on this WrestleMania and still come out as champion. Then Jey Uso comes out and stuff, and then he gives everybody a warning shot. He gives one to Cody, he gives one to Sammy. Then he goes to Gunther and he tells Gunther that he doesn't get one because he's already beaten him at in WrestleMania, and he's gonna make him tap out like a little beach and everything. And then Gunther nails um, Jay, and then they have a little brawl and stuff like that. And then Obafemi comes out, you know, um, and stuff, and just standing there at the outside the ring on the apron and stuff. And then Jay, he kicks Cody, you know, and then he looks at Oba. Then Gunther gets in the ring, and he takes out Jay. And then Sammy comes in and takes the belt from Gunther, and he nails Gunther with the belt and everything. And so, and then he stares Oba down, and then Cody comes in and hits Sammy, with the crossroads and stuff, and then he picks up the title and everything, and then him and Oba, have the little stare down. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see, how this goes and everything. Sooner or later, I think Oba's going to probably be a champion, soon. I mean, he's a dominating factor. He's a dominating force and everything. Whether he wins King of the Ring, not sure because, we got that Brock Lesnar situation above him and stuff. So we'll see what happens then. Tomorrow, don't forget the show starts at 11, and the card starts around at 1 and stuff. So you have your 2-hour pre-show, and then we have the actual show starting at 1. The first hour you got 2 matches, which will be the King and Queen of the Ring matches and stuff like that. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I said. Um, Thank you for watching. God bless, deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.